Millionaire CEO's daughter saved a dying woman, but the moment he saw her face, he married her instantly. Hi, my beautiful family. Let's begin with a heartfelt prayer. Dear loving God, please heal me completely and wrap my beautiful YouTube family in your mercy. Bless their hearts with peace, their homes with love, and their souls with joy. Amen. This is your Mr. Peter. Though I'm still in New York for treatment, your love is the medicine keeping me strong. You are not just subscribers. You are my heartbeat, my family, my strength. To my newest family members, welcome home. Please introduce yourself in the comments. I truly want to know who you are and where you're from. This channel is our family, and every soul matters here. If you ever see my stories on other channels, please know they are stolen. Only this place is real. Only here is our love. Please report the fake ones. Before we start, a gentle request. Please don't skip the story. Your one like and one comment helps protect this channel and keeps our family together. James is here with you while I recover. Now, let's enjoy today's story, made from the deepest place in my heart. Just for you.
Death whispers in children's hospitals, not through dramatic machines or frantic codes, but in the terrible silence when small lungs forget how to breathe and only a stranger's steady hands can call them back to life. The October morning light slanted through Washington General Hospital's pediatric wing, casting geometric patterns across floors that Demi Sianis had walked for 6 years. At 28, she possessed the quiet confidence that came from saving lives before breakfast and comforting grieving parents during lunch breaks. Her grandmother's silver cross caught the light as she adjusted her navy scrubs, responsibility settling across her shoulders like familiar armor. Another performance for the wealthy donors, Maya Ward muttered, sorting patient charts with practiced efficiency. Maya's cynicism had been honed by years of watching rich benefactors pose for photos while actual healthcare workers pulled double shifts. Demi paused her crash cart inventory. The cardiac unit needs new monitoring equipment. If smiling for cameras gets it funded, I'll smile. Her voice carried the musical accent inherited from her Greek father and Nigerian mother, a cadence that made even difficult conversations sound like lullabies. The pediatric ward hummed with controlled chaos, monitors beeping in harmony, soft squeaks of nurses' shoes, whispered prayers in multiple languages. Demi could read the subtle variations in this symphony like a conductor distinguishing instruments. Today felt different, charged with anticipation that preceded either miracles or disasters. Dr. Henry Reed appeared, silver hair immaculate despite the early hour. "Staff meeting in 5, he announced. "The Simpson Foundation arrives at 10. Everyone knew Nick Simpson, the widowed CEO who'd built his father's construction company into a billion-dollar empire, the philanthropist whose foundation quietly funded medical research citywide. Magazine covers showcased his angular handsomeness, but even in photographs, his eyes held shadows suggesting victory's price. 20 minutes later, the elevator chimed with expensive engineering's authority. Nick Simpson stepped into their world. Demi's breath caught, not from his undeniable presence, though photographs hadn't captured how perfectly his charcoal suit fit his tall frame, or how premature silver in his dark hair suggested distinction rather than aging, but from the little girl beside him. Erin Simpson was 7 and heartbreakingly beautiful, with her father's piercing blue eyes and dark waves past her shoulders. She wore navy wool over white dress, small hand trusting in her father's larger one. But her pallor caught Demi's trained attention, the subtle grayish undertone suggesting cardiovascular stress, slightly rapid breathing, faint bluish tinge around lips that should have been healthily pink. "Welcome to Washington General," Dr. Reed stepped forward with his practiced smile. "We're honored, Mr. Simpson. This must be Miss Erin." Nick's entire demeanor transformed watching his daughter. The sharp businessman disappeared, replaced by a father whose love seemed to change the air around them. Erin's anticipated this visit for weeks. She wants to see where the angels work. Angels? Dr. Reed raised an eyebrow. That's what I call nurses, Erin explained with childhood's serious intensity. They help people feel better when they're sick and scared, just like angels. Something twisted in Dimi's chest at the child's innocent faith. She'd seen too many children lose that trust, watched illness steal hope alongside health. Something luminous about Erin made her seem almost translucent under harsh fluorescent lighting. As the group toured the ward, Dimi walked alongside, ostensibly checking patients but actually keeping professional watch on Erin. The child was bright and engaged, asking thoughtful questions about equipment, showing genuine concern for patients encountered. But Dimi noticed her occasional pauses to catch breath, how her father's hand tightened protectively during those moments. In the NICU, Erin pressed against the observation window, watching premature infants with focused attention, suggesting she understood fragility most children couldn't grasp. "They're so small," she whispered. "Were they born too early?" "Some were, sweetheart, but doctors and nurses help them grow stronger daily. Like how you helped me grow stronger after Mommy died?" Nick's face stilled. Dimi saw him struggle with single parenthood's impossible task, being protector and comforter, strong enough to carry his daughter's fears, yet vulnerable enough to acknowledge his own. "Yes," he said finally, voice rough with emotion. Just like that. They reached the pediatric playroom, where young patients worked on art projects. Erin immediately approached a boy her age, clearly undergoing chemotherapy, bald head covered with bright red bandana. "I like your hat," she said with childhood's straightforward honesty. "Red is a very brave color." The boy smiled, the first genuine expression Dimi had seen from him in weeks. "Thanks. I picked it because superheroes wear red." "That's smart. What are you drawing?" "A rocket ship. I'll be an astronaut, visiting all the stars." "Amazing. I want to be a doctor, fixing people's hearts." Dimi felt tears threaten at their conversation. Children possessed brutal honesty about hope that adults spent years learning to temper. She watched Nick observe his daughter's natural empathy, seeing pride and love and something deeper, recognition that his child might be too good for a world that had already taken so much. "Miss." Dimi turned. Erin looked up with striking blue eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you one of the angels working here?" The innocent question nearly broke Dimi's professional composure. "I'm a nurse. I try helping people feel better when sick." "Then you are an angel. What's your name?" "Dimi, short for Dimitra." "Beautiful name. It sounds like music." Before Dimi could respond, Erin suddenly swayed. The change was subtle but immediate, face shifting from pale to ashen, breathing shallow and rapid, eyes taking on glassy quality Dimi recognized as collapse's precursor. "Erin." Nick was instantly beside her, businessman's composure cracking to reveal terrified father beneath. "Daddy, I feel—" Words trailed off as knees buckled. Dimi moved without conscious thought, body responding to 6 years of training and instinct. She caught Erin before the child hit floor, immediately assessing breathing, pulse, consciousness, while lowering her gently to carpet. "Call for crash cart," she ordered, voice carrying expertise's authority. Around them, the playroom erupted into controlled chaos, but Dimi's world narrowed to the small, still form in her arms. Erin's pulse was rapid and irregular, dangerous arrhythmia potentially fatal without immediate correction. Lips turning blue, breathing increasingly labored. "Come back, sweetheart," Dimi murmured, beginning chest compressions with precise pressure for delicate rib cage. "Your daddy needs you to come back." Nick dropped beside them, face white with terror. "Will she be okay? Please." Tell me she'll be okay. Demi met his eyes over his daughter's still form, seeing every parent's worst nightmare manifest. I'll take care of her, she promised, voice steady despite gravity. But stay calm and let me work. Dr. Reed arrived with pediatric crash cart. Together they stabilized Aaron's heart rhythm. Demi's hands moved with practiced precision, starting IV, administering medication, monitoring response. She spoke constantly to Aaron, Doctor, Reed, Nick, voice creating calm center in medical intervention storm. Heart rate stabilizing, Dr. Reed announced after minutes feeling like hours. Blood pressure rising. As if summoned, Erin's eyes fluttered open. She looked around confused before settling on her father's tear-streaked face. Daddy? Why are you crying? Nick made a sound, half laugh, half sob, carefully taking his daughter's hand. You scared me, baby girl. So much. I'm sorry, Aaron whispered, then looked at Demi with remarkable blue eyes. Thank you for taking care of me, Angel Demi. Something fractured in Demi's chest. In 6 years of nursing, she'd saved countless lives, comforted hundreds of families, witnessed miracles and tragedies equally. But something about this moment, this brave girl calling her angel, this terrified father looking at her with profound gratitude, felt different. As medical team prepared transferring Aaron to cardiac unit for monitoring, Nick caught Demi's hand. His touch was warm, surprisingly gentle for such powerful man. When their eyes met, she felt the world shift slightly. Thank you, he said, voice raw with emotion. You saved her life. She'll be fine, Demi replied, though something in his gaze made her forget carefully cultivated professional distance. I promise. Neither knew this moment, collision of crisis and courage, love and loss and unexpected hope, would be everything's beginning. That within hours Nick Simpson would question every assumption about love, fate, second chances. That Demi Sianis would discover sometimes the heart meant for healing wasn't in hospital beds, but walking halls in $1,000 suits, carrying scars she'd never learned to treat. All they knew was that in a pediatric playroom on October morning, surrounded by children's art and medical equipment's beeping, something had begun that would change all their lives forever. Outside hospital windows, Washington, D.C. continued its daily rhythm, but inside these walls, a love story was taking first breath, fragile and precious, and full of potential as the small heart that had just learned to beat steadily again. Chapter 2. Eyes That Stop Time. Love arrives like lightning, not the gentle sunrise poets describe, but a brilliant strike that illuminates hidden landscapes of the heart, revealing beauty and terror in equal measure, demanding you choose between shadow's safety and standing fully in dangerous light. Washington General's cardiac ICU existed in perpetual vigilance, where monitor beeps created mechanical lullabies for hearts too fragile to beat without electronic supervision. Nick Simpson had claimed the uncomfortable visitor's chair for 14 hours, his usual perfection transformed by paternal terror into something raw and human. His Armani jacket hung wrinkled over chair back, silk tie abandoned on windowsill, perfectly styled hair falling across his forehead in waves that would horrify his publicist. But Nick existed now where stock prices meant nothing compared to his 7-year-old daughter's steady breathing. Aaron slept deeply, small body dwarfed by adult-sized bed, surrounded by technological guardians monitoring every heartbeat, breath, fluctuation in delicate balance, keeping her tethered to life. Cardiologists had run tests, adjusted medications, spoken in careful language, offering hope without promises. But Nick's instinct for reading between lines told him his daughter's condition was more serious than anyone admitted. Mr. Simpson? The voice was silk-soft and honey-warm, carrying the musical accent that had somehow imprinted on his memory, during those terrifying playroom moments. Nick looked up to find Demi Sianis in the doorway, backlit by corridor fluorescence like something ethereal. She'd changed to soft lavender scrubs, complementing her dark skin beautifully, hair falling in loose curls around shoulders instead of earlier's practical ponytail. She carried a small gift bag, moving with quiet grace learned from navigating hospital corridors, without disturbing healing's delicate peace. "I hope you don't mind," she said, stepping into the room with careful deference. "I brought something for Aaron." Nick stood slowly, body protesting hours in rigid chair. As Demi approached, he caught subtle vanilla scent and something uniquely her, warmth carrying sunshine and safety essence. She was beautiful, he realized with distant surprise, not artificially like society women who'd pursued him since Elizabeth's death, but with natural radiance from spirit, uncompromised by cynicism. "She's been sleeping peacefully," Nick said, voice rougher than usual from exhaustion. "Doctors say that's normal after cardioversion." Demi approached bedside with professional ease, checking monitors with practiced eyes, reading electronic hieroglyphics. "Her rhythm looks stable," she observed, genuine relief coloring her voice. "Children's hearts are remarkably resilient with proper support." She reached into the gift bag, withdrawing a small stuffed elephant, soft gray fabric worn smooth by loving hands. "This is courage," she explained, placing the toy beside Aaron's pillow. "He belongs to one of our long-term patients, but she asked me to lend him to Aaron tonight. She said brave girls need to stick together." The simple gesture hit Nick unexpectedly. In his world of corporate mergers and strategic partnerships, kindness often came with price tags and ulterior motives. But this woman, this nurse who'd saved his daughter's life, offered comfort expecting nothing in return, sharing another child's treasure because she understood healing sometimes required more than medicine. "That's incredibly thoughtful," he managed, surprised by throat tightness. Demi settled into the chair across from him, movements economical and graceful. "How are you holding up?" 14 hours is a long vigil." Nick's laugh held no humor. "I've pulled longer hours in boardrooms negotiating deals worth less than my daughter's life means to me. But those were just money and market share. This is—" He gestured helplessly at monitors, IV lines, the small figure containing his entire world. "This is love," Demi finished gently. "Love makes everything more intense, frightening, beautiful. It's the price we pay for caring about something more than ourselves." Words hung between them, carrying weight neither fully understood yet. Nick found himself studying her face in dim lighting, intelligent brown eyes seeming to see through carefully constructed defenses, full lips curving naturally upward as if joy were her default setting, strong jawlines suggesting a woman who'd learned to stand ground in a world not always welcoming feminine strength. "Tell me about her," Demi said, nodding toward Aaron. "What's she like when not being brave in hospital beds?" Nick's expression softened, worry lines smoothing toward peace. "She's extraordinary, too perceptive for her own good, with this way of asking questions that make me question everything I thought I knew about life." He paused, watching his daughter's peaceful face. "Last month, she asked why people say, 'Money can't buy happiness,' if rich people keep trying to buy more things for happiness. I'm still working on an answer." Philosopher disguised as 7-year-old. She gets that from her mother. Elizabeth had this gift for finding profound truth in simple moments. She could spend entire afternoons watching clouds and emerge with insights reshaping my understanding of everything. Demi heard reverence when he spoke of his late wife, careful way he handled her memory like precious crystal. "You must miss her terribly." "I do," Nick admitted with honesty flowing easier in hospital rooms where life's artificial constructs felt less important than fundamental truths. But lately, the missing feels different. Less like open wound, more like gratitude that I had something worth missing. What changed? Nick looked directly at her, and Dimmy felt the world shift slightly. His eyes were remarkable blue, not pale, cold winter skies, but deep, warm sapphire touched by firelight. But it wasn't their color catching her breath. It was emotion depth she saw there, complexity of a man who'd learned to love completely, lost that love to death, yet somehow found courage to remain open to feeling again. "Meeting you," he said simply, words falling between them like stones into still water, creating ripples spreading in unpredictable directions. Dimmy felt heat rise in her cheeks, surprise and something deeper. Recognition that this moment was important, this man offering something precious and fragile and completely unexpected. "Mr. Simpson." "Nick," he corrected gently. "After what happened today, after what you did for Aaron, I think we've moved beyond formalities." "Nick," she repeated, liking how his name felt on her tongue. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting." "I'm not sure either," he admitted with self-deprecating smile transforming his entire face. "6 months ago, I thought I had life figured out. Widowed father, focused on building business empire for my daughter's future. I dated occasionally, obligatory charity function appearances, but nothing serious. Nothing threatening the careful balance I'd constructed around grief." He leaned forward, hands clasped between knees, vulnerability replacing controlled confidence she'd seen earlier. "But watching you today, seeing how naturally you cared for Erin, how you made her feel safe during worst fear, it woke something I thought had died with Elizabeth." Professional training told Dimmy to maintain appropriate boundaries, deflect this conversation to safer territory. But something in his voice, careful way he offered glimpses of guarded heart, made her want to stay in this dangerous space where honesty lived. "Nick," she said carefully, "what you're feeling is gratitude. I helped your daughter during medical emergency. It's natural for parents to—" "No," he interrupted, not rudely but with quiet conviction of someone who'd spent years learning to recognize difference between gratitude and something more profound. "What I feel for you goes beyond gratitude. It's recognition. Recognition of something I didn't know I was searching for until I found it." Nick's voice grew softer, more intimate. "You have this way of bringing light into dark spaces, making everything feel like it'll be okay even when the world's falling apart. You did it for Aaron in that playroom, and you're doing it for me right now." Demi felt careful professional composure wavering under his gaze intensity. She dealt with grateful families before, learned to accept thanks graciously while maintaining appropriate distance. But Nick Simpson wasn't offering simple gratitude. He was offering something far more complex and potentially wonderful and absolutely terrifying. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll have dinner with me," Nick replied, words carrying careful hope of someone who'd learned life could take everything without warning. "Tomorrow night. Nothing formal, nothing complicated. Just two people sharing a meal and getting to know each other." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" Simple question, but the answer was layered with fears Dimmy had spent years learning to manage. "Because you're Nick Simpson and I'm just a nurse. Because you live in penthouses and I share a 2-bedroom apartment. Because gratitude isn't love, no matter how much it might feel like it." Nick studied her face in dim light, seeing intelligence and strength that had drawn him from first moment, but also careful walls built, protecting herself from disappointment. "What if I told you I don't care about any of those things? What if I told you that watching you save my daughter's life was like watching someone give me back the sun? I'd say you're exhausted and emotional and not thinking clearly." "Maybe," Nick conceded with slight smile, "but I'd also say some of the best decisions I've ever made happened when I stopped thinking and started trusting what felt right." Before Dimmy could respond, a soft sound from the bed drew their attention. Erin was stirring, dark lashes fluttering against pale cheeks as she swam toward consciousness. "Daddy," she whispered, voice small and confused. Nick was beside her instantly, taking her small hand in both larger ones. "I'm here, baby girl, right here." Erin's eyes opened fully, scanning unfamiliar room before settling on Dimmy's face. "Angel Dimmy? You're still here?" "I wanted to make sure you were feeling better," Dimmy said, moving to check monitors with professional efficiency. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" "Tired," Erin admitted, then noticed Stuffed Elephant. "Who's this?" "That's Courage. He's on loan from another brave girl who thought you might need a friend tonight." Erin hugged Elephant to her chest, face brightening with childhood's resilience. "He's perfect. Thank you." She looked between Dimmy and her father with perceptive intelligence that had always amazed Nick. "Are you two friends now?" The question hung in air, innocent but loaded with implications, making both adults suddenly aware of intimacy they'd shared over the past hour. "We're getting to know each other," Nick said carefully. "Good," Erin declared with childhood's absolute certainty. "Daddy needs more friends, especially pretty ones who are angels." Dimmy felt tears threaten at the child's simple acceptance. How she'd been seamlessly included in this small family's narrative. "You need to rest now. Doctors will want to see how well your heart behaves overnight." "Will you come see me tomorrow?" Erin asked, clutching Courage tighter. "I'll be working in pediatric unit. I'll stop by to check on you." "Promise?" "I promise." As Erin drifted back toward sleep, Nick walked Dimmy to the door. In corridor's harsh fluorescent lighting, the past hour's intimacy felt more fragile, uncertain. "About dinner," Nick said quietly, not wanting to wake his daughter but needing to know where they stood. Dimmy looked back through doorway at Erin, already asleep with Courage tucked under her arm, then met Nick's hopeful gaze. "One dinner," she said, surprising herself. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere we can talk." Nick's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face with joy and relief. "Tomorrow at 7, I'll pick you up." "I'll meet you somewhere," Dimmy corrected, not ready to open her private world to this man who'd already begun changing everything. "Somewhere normal." "Normal," Nick agreed, though something in his expression suggested he was already planning anything but normal. As Dimmy walked toward elevator, she felt Nick's gaze following her, felt possibility and danger's equal weight. She'd spent 6 years building careful life around service and self-sufficiency, learning to find satisfaction, healing others while keeping her own heart safely protected. But sometimes life had other plans. Sometimes a little girl collapsed in playroom, and her father looked at you with eyes holding galaxies of love and loss and hope, and you discovered all your careful walls were no match for human connection's simple power. Elevator doors closed on her reflection, woman who looked exactly the same as that morning, but somehow felt fundamentally altered. Tomorrow she would have dinner with Nick Simpson, and something told her nothing would ever be quite the same again. Chapter 3. The Impossible Proposal. There are moments when the heart recognizes truth so profound that logic becomes irrelevant. When love arrives not as gentle awakening, but as revolution, demanding complete reconstruction of everything you believed about possibility, timing, and the sacred mathematics of human connection. The family consultation room at Washington General existed in carefully managed neutrality, beige walls witnessing every human emotion, fluorescent lighting rendering all complexions equally pale, furniture designed for comfort without encouraging extended stays. At 6:23 a.m. on Thursday, with October rain painting abstract patterns on the single window, it felt like the universe's most important room. Nick Simpson hadn't slept in 38 hours. Not since Erin's collapse, not through endless nights monitoring her heart rhythm, Not during carefully worded conversations with cardiologists who spoke in medical probabilities rather than promises. His usually immaculate appearance had been stripped to essentials: wrinkled dress shirt, loosened tie, exhaustion that settled into bone and sinew, changing how he inhabited his own skin. Dr. Reed had delivered news with gentle precision, learned from 25 years of pediatric cardiology. Aaron's condition was manageable but serious: congenital arrhythmia requiring ongoing medication, regular monitoring, vigilant care that could transform ordinary parenting into delicate balance between protection and freedom. "She can live completely normally, doctor," Reed had assured them, silver hair catching harsh lighting as he explained treatment protocols. "With proper management, children with her condition often forget they have anything different about their hearts." But Nick heard careful qualifications embedded in medical optimism, the "with proper management" and "ongoing monitoring," meaning his daughter would carry this vulnerability forever. The businessman in him was already calculating risks, imagining scenarios, building contingency plans around his child's fragile miracle of continued existence. Now, as dawn crept across the city skyline, he found himself alone with Demisianis in neutral territory, 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee growing cold between them, like offering to caffeine and human endurance gods. Demi had worked double shift ensuring personal oversight of Aaron's care, pulling 16 hours that should have exhausted her, but instead sharpened her into focused healing instrument. Her lavender scrubs were pristine despite the long night: dark curls pulled back revealing elegant neckline, brown eyes holding particular alertness of someone functioning on adrenaline and purpose when sleep became luxury. "She's going to be fine," Demi said, voice carrying musical accent Nick had begun associating with safety and comfort. "I know it's frightening hearing heart condition, but pediatric arrhythmias are incredibly manageable. I've seen hundreds of children with similar diagnoses play sports, pursue careers, live full, unrestricted lives." Nick wrapped hands around his coffee cup, using warmth to ground himself in physical sensation when emotions threatened to overwhelm carefully maintained control. "I keep thinking about all the things I didn't know to worry about. All the moments when she seemed tired or pale, and I attributed it to normal childhood things instead of—" He gestured helplessly at monitors and medical equipment, becoming their lives' backdrop. "You're an incredible father," Demi said with quiet conviction. "The way you've been with her these past 2 days, constant presence, explaining things so she won't be afraid, making her laugh when you're terrified. That's not accident or instinct. That's love translated into action, exactly what she needs." "Is it enough?" The question escaped before Nick could stop it, carrying weight of every midnight worry he'd harbored since Elizabeth's death. "I've been trying to be everything: mother and father, protector and comforter. But what if I'm failing? What if she needs things I can't provide?" Demi leaned forward and Nick caught subtle vanilla scent and something uniquely her: warmth carrying sunlight and safety essence. "Can I tell you something I've learned in 6 years of pediatric nursing? Please." Children don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. Adults who show up consistently, acknowledge fears without dismissing them, love fiercely even when, especially when, that love feels scary and vulnerable and bigger than anything they know how to handle. She paused, eyes never leaving his face. "Aaron has that in you. A father who rearranged his entire life around her well-being, who sleeps in hospital chairs because being near her matters more than his own comfort." "You were there too," Nick said suddenly, words carrying more weight than simple gratitude. "Both nights. You stayed with her during procedures you weren't required to monitor. You brought that elephant, sang songs during MRI because you knew she was scared. You've been caring for her like she was your own child." Demi felt heat rise in her cheeks, embarrassment and something deeper: Recognition that this man saw and valued things others often overlooked. She's a special little girl. Anyone would have... No, Nick interrupted gently but firmly. Not anyone. Most medical professionals would have done their jobs competently and moved on to other patients. You made us feel like family. The word hung between them, carrying implications neither had fully acknowledged until this moment. Family. Such simple concept, yet so complex in execution. Daily choice to prioritize someone else's well-being above your own comfort. Find joy in another person's happiness. Create space where love could grow without conditions or expiration dates. Nick, Dimi said carefully, sensing they were approaching territory that could change everything between them. You've been under enormous stress. You haven't slept properly in days. The gratitude you're feeling is natural, but this isn't gratitude, Nick said, voice growing stronger with certainty. Or rather, it's gratitude, but it's also recognition. Of something I didn't know I was searching for until I found it. He stood abruptly, beginning to pace in small space with restless energy of someone whose emotions had grown too large for containment. 6 months ago, my biggest concerns were quarterly projections and market expansions. I had convinced myself that Aaron and I were enough, that we'd built something sustainable from our losses' ruins. But watching you these past few days, seeing how effortlessly you fit into our lives, how naturally you care for both of us. Nick, you're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, he countered, stopping his pacing to face her directly. Do you know what I realized last night, sitting beside Erin's bed while you checked her monitors for the 100th time? Dimi shook her head, not trusting her voice. I realized I wasn't just grateful for what you did. I was grateful for who you are, for the way you hum unconsciously while working, how you always adjust lighting so it won't hurt patients' eyes, how you know every child's name instead of just room numbers. His voice grew softer, more intimate. I was grateful for the way you make me want to be a better man, not through criticism or expectation, but simply by being yourself. Nick, ... Dimi's voice was barely whisper. I love you. Words fell into space between them like stones into still water, creating ripples altering the very molecular structure of air they breathed. Dimi stared at him in shock, lips parted but unable to form sounds matching what he'd just offered's magnitude. Nick ran hands through dark hair, messing it further in gesture, making him look younger, more vulnerable. I know how that sounds. I know it violates every rule of appropriate timing and rational behavior, but it's also the most honest thing I've ever said. You don't love me, Dimi said finally, finding her voice. You love the idea of me. You love the nurse who helped your daughter. But you don't know me, not really. You don't know I'm stubborn and independent and have strong opinions about everything from politics to proper coffee brewing. Then tell me, Nick said simply, moving to sit directly across from her, close enough that she could see silver flecks in his blue eyes, fine lines speaking of sleepless nights and business pressures and single parenthood's weight. Tell me about your politics and coffee preferences. Tell me what makes you laugh and what keeps you awake at night. Tell me about your family, dreams, fears, everything. Sincerity in his voice almost undid her completely. Dimi had spent 3 years since devastating breakup with Andrew Richardson, building walls around her heart, learning to trust her own judgment above promises of men who claimed to love her uniqueness until that uniqueness became inconvenient. This is insane, she whispered. Maybe, Nick agreed, leaning forward so their knees almost touched. But insane doesn't mean wrong. Some of life's most beautiful things don't make sense on paper. Before Dimi could respond, Nick did something shocking them both. He slid from his chair onto one knee. What are you doing? Dimi gasped, heart hammering against ribs. Something I should have done the moment I realized what you mean to me, Nick said, voice steady despite what he was about to ask's magnitude. He reached into his jacket pocket, withdrawing small velvet box worn smooth by decades of handling. Nick, get up, please. You're scaring me. I'm scaring myself, he admitted, opening the box to reveal stunning vintage engagement ring, Art Deco design with brilliant diamonds surrounded by smaller stones in intricate platinum setting, catching fluorescent lighting and throwing rainbows across beige walls. This was my grandmother's ring, Nick said, voice thick with emotion. She wore it for 63 years of marriage. My mother wore it for 38 years until my father died. Elizabeth said she was just keeping it safe until time came to pass it on to the woman who would love Erin like her own daughter. Demi felt tears spilling down cheeks, overwhelmed by history and hope's weight contained in the small platinum and diamond circle. Demi Sianis, Nick continued, voice growing stronger with each word, I'm not asking you to marry a stranger. I'm asking you to marry the man who has spent 38 hours watching you turn medical care into acts of love. I'm asking you to marry someone who knows you, sing softly to children during procedures, remember every patient's birthday, cry when you think no one's looking because you feel other people's pain as if it were your own. Nick, this is happening too fast. Time is human construct, Nick interrupted gently. Love operates on its own timeline. What I feel for you doesn't need years to validate its truth. It needs only honesty. He took shaky breath, blue eyes never leaving her face. I'm asking you to be my wife because you've already become essential to my happiness. I'm asking you to be Erin's mother because you've been caring for her like she belongs to you from the moment we met. I'm asking you to build a life with me because I finally understand what Elizabeth meant when she said real love doesn't diminish what came before. It expands your capacity for all love. Demi pressed hands to mouth, trying to process what he was offering's enormity. Marriage to Nick Simpson would mean entering a world of wealth and privilege she'd never imagined for herself. It would mean instant motherhood to chronically ill child. It would mean trusting her heart to a man she'd known less than a week, believing what felt like destiny might actually be exactly that. I can't promise blending our worlds will be easy, Nick continued, voice growing more urgent. I can't promise everyone will understand or approve. But I can promise I will love you fiercely and faithfully for the rest of my life. I can promise I will support your dreams, respect your independence, never ask you to be anyone other than exactly who you are. He held up the ring, seeming to capture all fluorescent lighting, transforming it into something magical. I can promise Erin will have a mother who chose to love her, not because biology demanded it, but because her heart recognized something worth protecting. And I can promise together we can create something beautiful enough to honor both the love we've lost and the love we've found. Silence stretched between them, broken only by distant hospital sounds, elevator bells, soft ding, changing shifts muted conversations, healing's eternal rhythm continuing regardless of personal revolutions. Say something, Nick whispered, voice holding careful hope of someone who'd learned life could take everything without warning, but still chose to believe in possibility. Demi looked at this impossible man kneeling in hospital consultation room, offering her future she'd never dared imagine, asking her to trust in something defying every rational argument she could construct against it. Yes, she whispered, so quietly he had to lean closer to hear. Yes, yes, I'll marry you, she said, voice growing stronger with each word. Yes, I'll be Erin's mother and your wife and your partner in whatever comes next. Yes, I'll take this leap of faith with you, even though it terrifies me. Nick's face transformed with joy so profound it seemed to illuminate the entire room. He slipped vintage ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if 3 generations of women had been keeping it safe for exactly this moment. I love you too, Demi said, words feeling both foreign and inevitable on her tongue. I love your devotion to Aaron, your strength in crisis, the way you make me believe fairy tales might actually come true. I love that you see me, really see me, and value what you find there. Nick rose and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of spun glass and starlight. When he kissed her, it was with reverence of someone sealing sacred promise, and Demi felt her carefully constructed world rearrange itself around this new truth. Sometimes love really did conquer all, not by erasing obstacles, but by making them irrelevant in the face of something larger than fear. Chapter 4. Hearts Under Fire. When the heart makes a decision that defies logic, the world conspires to test that choice through worried friends, protective family, and society's cruel whispers that cannot fathom love without conditions, profit margins, or carefully calculated social equations. The Washington Post's Society page spread across Grace Cross's mahogany desk like a declaration of war. The headline screamed, "Billionaire's Whirlwind Romance. Nick Simpson, engaged to hospital nurse after 2 weeks," accompanied by the now infamous photo of their cherry blossom proposal, intimate, beautiful, and entirely too public for Grace's comfort. "This is exactly what I feared," Grace said, her voice tight with controlled frustration as she slid the newspaper across to Nick. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into its usual, perfect chignon, but stress had added fine lines around her gray eyes. "The media has turned your love story into a tabloid spectacle." Nick barely glanced at the article. He'd already seen it that morning, along with 3 similar pieces in other papers and 5 blog posts speculating about Demi's gold digger motives. His focus remained on the ring box he was turning over in his hands, a smaller version of his grandmother's ring, sized perfectly for a 7-year-old finger. "It doesn't matter what they write, Grace. What matters is—" "It matters to your shareholders," Grace interrupted, opening her laptop to reveal a series of stock charts. "Simpson Industries dropped 3 points yesterday because investors are questioning your judgment. The board is asking questions I can't answer, such as why the CEO of a Fortune 500 company proposed to a woman he'd known for less than a week, such as whether this affects your decision-making capabilities in other areas." Grace's voice softened slightly. "Nick, I'm trying to protect you here." "From what? From happiness? From love?" Nick set down the ring box and met her gaze directly. "From the possibility that someone might actually care about me for who I am rather than what I can do for them." Grace leaned back in her chair, studying her business partner and oldest friend with the shrewd assessment that had made her one of D.C. most successful attorneys. "Tell me about her background." "Her background is irrelevant. Humor me." Nick's jaw tightened, but he recognized Grace's tone. She wasn't asking as a friend. She was building a case. Demi grew up in Baltimore, working-class family. Her father was a Navy mechanic. Her mother cleaned office buildings at night. She worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school at Johns Hopkins on a full academic scholarship. Student loans? $43,000 remaining, which I've already arranged to pay off. Previous relationships? Grace, this isn't gossip, Nick. This is due diligence. The media will dig up everything, and I need to know what we're dealing with. Nick stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Washington Monument. She was involved with a cardiologist for 6 months 3 years ago, Dr. Andrew Richardson from a prominent D.C. family. He ended things when his mother made it clear Demi wasn't suitable for someone of his social standing. And now she's engaged to an even wealthier man. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Nick turned slowly, and Grace saw something dangerous in his expression that reminded her why he'd been so successful in business, and why crossing him was never wise. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that from the outside, this looks like a pattern. Nurse targets wealthy doctors, moves up the food chain until she lands the biggest fish in the pond. Get out. Grace blinked. Nick, I said get out. His voice was deadly quiet. And if you ever suggest again that the woman I love is a gold digger, you can find yourself a new business partner. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From the best thing that's happened to me since Elizabeth died. From watching my daughter have a mother who loves her unconditionally. From being happy for the first time in years. Nick moved back to his desk, but his posture remained rigid. I know exactly who Demi Sianis is, Grace. She's the woman who saved my daughter's life without knowing our last name. She's the woman who works double shifts to cover for colleagues with sick children. She's the woman who cried when I told her about Elizabeth because she understood that loving me meant honoring my first wife's memory. Grace studied his face, seeing conviction that couldn't be shaken by logic or fear. And if you're wrong, if this is exactly what it looks like from the outside, then I'll deal with the consequences. But I'm not wrong. Meanwhile, across town at Washington General Hospital, Demi was discovering that fairy tale engagements came with very real complications. Hospital security had escorted 3 different reporters from the building after they'd attempted to interview patients about the nurse who caught a billionaire. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from unknown numbers, and someone had leaked her work schedule to a gossip blogger. You can't keep working like this, Maya said, finding Demi hiding in the supply closet during her lunch break. There are photographers camped outside your apartment building, and Mrs. Chen from 4B called to say someone offered her money for insider information about you. This is insane, Demi said, slumping against the shelving. I'm just a nurse. Why does anyone care who I'm dating? Because you're marrying Nick Simpson, Maya replied gently. And because fairy tale romances sell newspapers, especially when people can find reasons to doubt them. Demi's phone buzzed with another unknown number. She declined the call, but it immediately rang again. Let me handle this, Maya said, taking the phone. She answered with crisp professionalism. Demi Sianis's phone. This is her representative. Demi watched in amazement as her best friend transformed into a professional publicist. No, Miss Sianis will not be commenting on her relationship. No, she will not be available for interviews. Any further harassment will result in legal action. Maya hung up and handed the phone back. That was the 3rd reporter today asking about your Cinderella story. They want quotes about growing up poor, your student loans, whether you'd ever met Nick before the hospital incident. They're trying to prove I'm a gold digger, Demi said quietly, which is ridiculous to anyone who actually knows you, Maya said firmly. But Demi, you need to prepare yourself. This is only getting worse. That evening, Nick found Demi in Erin's hospital room, reading Charlotte's Web aloud while his daughter recovered from her latest round of tests. The sight of them together, Demi's musical voice bringing E.B. White's words to life, Erin hanging on every word despite knowing the story by heart, made his chest tight with love and protectiveness. How's our patient today? He asked, kissing the top of Erin's head. Much better, Demi replied, closing the book and marking their place. Dr. Reed says she can go home tomorrow if her numbers stay stable overnight. Really? Erin's face lit up. Can we celebrate with ice cream? We can celebrate however you want, sweetheart, Nick said, settling into the chair beside Demi. But first, I have something for you. He pulled out the small ring box, and Erin's eyes went wide. Is that for me? It is. This is a very special ring that belonged to your first mommy when she was little. She always said she was saving it for a very important occasion. Nick opened the box to reveal a delicate gold band with a small diamond. Elizabeth's childhood ring, sized down to fit a 7-year-old finger. "Since Miss Dimmy is going to be your new mommy," Nick continued, "we thought you should have something special to show that we're all going to be a family together." Erin held out her hand solemnly as Nick slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the light as she moved her hand to admire it. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she breathed. "Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Mommy Dimmy." The word mommy hit Dimmy like a physical blow. She felt tears spring to her eyes as Erin threw her arms around her neck, holding tight. "I love you both so much," Erin whispered into Dimmy's shoulder. "I can't wait to be a real family." "We already are a real family," Dimmy whispered back, meeting Nick's eyes over their daughter's head. "We have been since the day we met." Later, as they walked to the hospital parking garage, Nick took Dimmy's hand. "I need to tell you something. Grace thinks we're moving too fast. The media attention is affecting the company's stock price, and the board is asking questions." "Maybe they're right," Dimmy said quietly. "Maybe we should slow down, give people time to adjust to the idea." Nick stopped walking. "Is that what you want?" "I want what's best for you and Erin. If that means waiting, no." Nick turned to face her fully. "Dimmy, I've spent the last 3 years making every decision based on what other people thought was best. Playing it safe, maintaining the status quo, never taking risks that might upset the careful balance I'd constructed around my grief." He cupped her face in his hands. "But you know what I've learned. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. Love doesn't follow other people's timelines, and the only opinion that matters is ours. The whole world is watching us, Nick, waiting for us to fail. Then let's give them something worth watching," he said, kissing her softly. "Let's show them what real love looks like. The messy, complicated, absolutely irrational kind that changes everything and makes no sense to anyone except the people living it." Dimmy looked into his eyes, those remarkable blue eyes that had become her anchor in this storm of media attention and public scrutiny, and felt her fears quiet. Maybe the world would never understand their love story. Maybe people would always question their motives and timing. But what she and Nick had built together, what they were building with Erin, was too precious to sacrifice on the altar of public opinion. "You're right," she said, standing on tiptoe to kiss him back. "Let them watch. Let them doubt. We know what we have. And what do we have?" "Everything," Dimmy said simply. "We have everything that matters." As they drove home through the D.C. streets, past the monuments and memorials that had witnessed countless love stories throughout history, Nick and Dimmy knew they were facing their first real test as a couple. But they also knew they would face it together, with Erin between them and love as their armor against whatever storms lay ahead. Because some love stories aren't meant to be easy, they're meant to be true, and truth, in the end, was the only thing that mattered. Chapter 5. The Perfect Storm. Love reveals its true strength not in moments of crisis, but in quiet Sunday afternoons when the mundane realities of blending two different worlds test whether fairy tale romance can survive the beautiful, terrifying ordinariness of building a life together. Sunday morning at Nick's penthouse began with the kind of domestic chaos that no amount of wealth could prevent. Erin had insisted on making pancakes like a real family, which resulted in flour coating every surface of the state-of-the-art kitchen, maple syrup somehow finding its way onto the Italian marble countertops, and 3 smoke alarms going off when Nick tried to flip what could generously be called pancake-shaped objects. "I think they're supposed to be golden brown, not charcoal black," Dimmy observed, waving a dish towel at the nearest smoke detector while trying not to laugh at Nick's expression of complete bewilderment. "The recipe said medium heat," Nick protested, holding up his tablet where he'd pulled up a supposedly foolproof pancake tutorial. "I followed the instructions exactly." "Daddy, you have to feel the cooking, not just follow the rules." Aaron explained with the patience of someone educating a particularly slow student. That's what Grandma Elizabeth used to say. Cooking is about love, not numbers. Demi felt the familiar pang whenever Elizabeth was mentioned. Not jealousy, exactly, but the complex emotion of loving someone who carried another woman's memory so carefully in his heart. She was still learning to navigate this delicate territory, understanding that honoring Elizabeth's place in their family was essential to building something healthy and whole. Your grandma was very wise, Demi said, taking the spatula from Nick's hands before he could create more culinary disasters. How about I handle the pancakes, and you two can be my sous chefs? What's a sous chef? Aaron asked, climbing onto a bar stool to watch Demi work. It's the chef's most important helper, Demi explained, adjusting the heat and pouring fresh batter into the pan. They do all the tasks that make cooking possible. Like what? Like setting the table and washing berries and keeping the head chef company so she doesn't get lonely while she cooks. Nick watched this exchange with something close to wonder. 6 weeks ago, his biggest concern had been whether Erin was eating enough vegetables. Now he was watching the woman he loved seamlessly integrate herself into their morning routine, turning what could have been a disaster into a moment of connection and learning. Nick, Demi said softly, not turning from the stove, you're staring again. I'm memorizing, he replied, the same response he'd given her before, but with deeper meaning now. I want to remember exactly how you look in my kitchen, teaching our daughter, making everything feel like home. The word our hung in the air between them, weighty with implication. They'd been engaged for 2 weeks, but the practicalities of merging their lives were proving more complex than either had anticipated. Demi still maintained her own apartment, though she spent most nights at Nick's penthouse. Her nursing schedule often conflicted with his business meetings. And then there were the small, unexpected moments of culture clash that reminded them how different their backgrounds really were. Miss Demi, Erin said, swinging her legs as she watched Demi flip perfect golden pancakes. Why do you still have your old apartment if you live here now? The question was innocent, but it hit on something that had been causing tension between Nick and Demi for days. Nick wanted her to move in completely, to make the penthouse officially their shared home. Demi wasn't ready to give up her independence so completely, even though she couldn't articulate exactly why. Well, Demi said carefully, sometimes adults need time to adjust to big changes. Moving in together is a big step. But you're getting married, Aaron pointed out with 7-year-old logic. Married people live together. That's how marriage works. She's got a point, Nick said quietly, coming to stand beside Demi at the stove. We're getting married in 6 weeks. At some point, we're going to have to actually live together. Demi felt tension creep into her shoulders. This conversation had been brewing for days, circling around them like a storm they could see coming, but couldn't quite avoid. It's not that simple, Nick. Why not? Before she could answer, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her brother Daniel's name, and she quickly answered, grateful for the distraction. Hey, Dee, Daniel's voice carried the easy warmth of sibling affection. Are you free for lunch today? I'm in town for a conference, and I thought I could finally meet this famous fiancé of yours. Demi glanced at Nick, who was already nodding encouragingly. Actually, yes. We'd love to have you over. Nick's been wanting to meet my family. Great. Fair warning, though, I come with opinions and the protective big brother routine. I wouldn't expect anything less, Demi laughed. Come over around noon. I'll cook. After she hung up, Nick was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Everything okay? My brother wants to meet you, she said, suddenly nervous about the prospect of her two worlds colliding so directly. He's protective. Good, Nick said firmly. He should be protective of you. I'd be worried if he wasn't. 2 hours later, Daniel Mills stood in the marble foyer of Nick's penthouse, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the artwork that probably cost more than most people's houses, and the general atmosphere of wealth that seemed to permeate every surface. At 30, Daniel was 2 inches taller than Dimmy, with the same warm brown eyes and musical accent. But where Dimmy had learned to navigate different social circles, Daniel wore his working-class background like armor. "Jesus, Dimmy," he muttered as she gave him a tour. "This place is bigger than our entire childhood home." "Language," Dimmy warned automatically, nodding toward Erin, who was following them around with the eager curiosity of someone showing off her territory. "This is my room," Erin announced, pulling Daniel into her bedroom, which was decorated in shades of pink and white, with more stuffed animals than seemed physically possible. "And this is where Mommy Dimmy sleeps when she stays over." Daniel raised an eyebrow at his sister. "Mommy Dimmy?" "It's complicated," Dimmy said quickly. "I bet it is." Lunch was an exercise in careful diplomacy. Nick had clearly done his research on Daniel's work as a physical therapist, asking intelligent questions about treatment protocols and rehabilitation techniques. Daniel, for his part, was polite but reserved, studying Nick with the clinical assessment of someone trying to determine whether this man was worthy of his sister's love. "So," Daniel said as Dimi served the Greek salad she'd made from their mother's recipe, "tell me how this happened. Dimi's always been careful about relationships, methodical. The last time she brought a man home to meet the family, they'd been dating for 8 months. "Daniel," Dimi warned. "What?" "I'm just saying, 2 weeks from meeting to engagement is pretty fast, even for people who believe in love at first sight." Nick set down his fork and met Daniel's gaze directly. "You're right. It is fast. By any rational measure, what Dimi and I have done makes no sense. But I've spent the last 3 years making every decision based on what made sense. What was safe, what was predictable, what wouldn't disrupt the careful life I'd built around my grief." Nick glanced at Erin, who was listening with the intense concentration children brought to adult conversations they sensed were important. "And I was dying inside. Not living, just existing." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his defensive posture softening slightly. "And Dimi changed that?" "Dimi saved my daughter's life," Nick said simply. "But more than that, she reminded me what it felt like to be fully alive, to wake up excited about the day ahead, instead of just grateful to have gotten through another night." "That's very romantic," Daniel said, his tone neutral. "But romance doesn't pay bills or solve problems when real life gets complicated." "You're right," Nick agreed. "Romance doesn't, but love does. The kind of love that shows up at 3 a.m. when your kid has nightmares. The kind that rearranges work schedules to attend school plays. The kind that sees past surface differences to something deeper and more essential." Dimi felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in Nick's voice, but she also felt the weight of her brother's skepticism, the echo of all her own fears about whether two people from such different worlds could really make a life together work. "And what about those surface differences?" Daniel asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, they look pretty significant. You live in a penthouse that probably costs more per month than most people make in a year. Dimi shares a 2-bedroom apartment and has student loans she'll be paying off for the next decade." "Had," Nick corrected quietly. "I paid them off last week." The silence that followed was deafening. Dimi stared at Nick, her mouth slightly open. "You did what?" "I paid off your student loans. I was going to tell you, but with all the media attention and wedding planning, I didn't want to add another complication to—" "You had no right." Dimi's voice was quiet but carried the kind of fury that was more dangerous than shouting. "Those were my responsibility. You're going to be my wife. Your responsibilities are my responsibilities." "No," Dimi said, standing so abruptly that her chair scraped against the floor. My responsibilities are my responsibilities. I didn't agree to marry you so you could pay my debts. I never suggested you did. Then why would you do something like that without even discussing it with me? Nick looked genuinely confused by her anger. Because I love you, because I want to take care of you, because the money means nothing to me, but those loans were stressing you out. That's not the point. Demi's voice rose despite her efforts to keep the argument away from Erin, who was watching with wide, frightened eyes. The point is that you made a decision about my life without consulting me. You took away my choice. I was trying to help. You were trying to control. The word hung between them like a landmine. Daniel cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe I should go. No, Demi said firmly. Stay. Finish your lunch. Nick and I need to have a conversation, but not in front of Erin. She looked at Nick, her brown eyes blazing with hurt and fury. In your study. Now. As they left the dining room, Erin's small voice followed them. Are Daddy and Mommy Demi going to get divorced before they even get married? The question stopped both adults in their tracks. Daniel reached over and took Erin's hand. Hey, kiddo, sometimes grown-ups need to have important conversations about how to be a family together. It doesn't mean they love each other any less. In Nick's study, with the door closed and the sound of Daniel entertaining Erin filtering through the walls, Demi and Nick faced each other across the expanse of his mahogany desk. I don't understand why you're so angry, Nick said finally. I know you don't, Demi replied, and that seemed to hurt him more than her fury had. And that's the problem, Nick. You live in a world where money solves problems, where writing a check makes things go away. But those student loans weren't just debt to me. They were proof that I had worked for something, that I had earned my place in the world through my own efforts. I wasn't trying to diminish what you accomplished. But you did. Whether you meant to or not, you took away something that was mine. You made a decision about my financial life without consulting me. How is that different from what Andrew Richardson's mother did when she decided I wasn't good enough for her son? Nick felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. That's not the same thing at all, isn't it? In both cases, wealthy people decided what was best for me without considering what I wanted. The only difference is that you claim to love me while you're doing it. They stared at each other across the desk, the weight of their different backgrounds and expectations settling between them like fog. For the first time since their engagement, Demi wondered if love really was enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. I don't know how to do this, Nick said finally, his voice small and lost. I don't know how to be with someone without trying to protect them, provide for them, solve their problems. It's how I loved Elizabeth. It's how I love Erin. But I'm not Elizabeth, Demi said gently, her anger cooling into something more like sadness. And I'm not Erin. I'm a grown woman who needs to be your partner, not your dependent. I know that. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally, he ran his hands through his hair. I'm terrified of losing you, and taking care of you feels like the only way I know how to show you that you matter to me. Demi walked around the desk and took his hands in hers. Nick, I don't need you to take care of me. I need you to trust me to take care of myself. I need you to consult me before making decisions that affect my life. I need you to see me as your equal, not your responsibility. I do see you as my equal. Then start treating me like one. Nick pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. And I'm sorry. We're going to have to learn how to do this, Demi said into his shoulder. How to be from different worlds, but equal partners. It's not going to be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, Nick replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. But I want to learn. I want to do better. When they returned to the dining room, they found Daniel and Erin deep in conversation about her latest art project. Both looked up anxiously as they entered. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. "We're working on it," Demi said honestly. "But yes, everything's okay." Erin slipped from her chair and hugged both of them around the waist. "I was scared you were going to stop loving each other." "Never," Nick said firmly. "Sometimes people who love each other have disagreements about how to show that love, but that doesn't mean the love goes away." "Good," Erin said with 7-year-old pragmatism. "Because I already told my teacher you were going to be my new mommy, and I don't want to have to take it back." As Daniel prepared to leave, he pulled Demi aside. "He's not what I expected," he said quietly. "Better or worse? Different. He loves you. That much is obvious. But love isn't always enough, Dee. You two are going to have to work harder than most couples because you're starting from such different places." "I know," Demi said, "but I think we can figure it out." "I hope so," Daniel said, hugging her tightly, "because despite my concerns, I can see that he makes you happy, and you deserve to be happy." That evening, after Erin was asleep and the dishes were done, Nick and Demi sat on the penthouse balcony, watching the lights of Washington, D.C. sparkle below them. "I have something for you," Nick said, pulling out an envelope. Demi tensed. "Nick, if it's another check—" "It's not," he said quickly. "Open it." Inside the envelope was a bank statement showing that Nick had transferred the exact amount of her student loan payoff into her personal account. "I can't take the money back," he said. "The loans are paid, but I can give you the choice of what to do with the equivalent amount. Pay me back if that's important to you. Donate it to charity. Invest it. Whatever you want. The choice is yours." Demi looked at the statement, then at Nick's face, seeing the sincerity there. It wasn't perfect. The loans were still gone. The choice still made for her initially. But it was a start. It was him trying to understand what she needed. "Thank you," she said softly. "This is better." "I'm going to mess up again," Nick warned. "Probably soon. I've been making unilateral decisions for so long that it's become instinct." "Then I'll call you on it. And you'll do better next time. That's how partnerships work." "Is that what we are? Partners?" Demi smiled, leaning over to kiss him softly. "We're partners. We're lovers. We're about to be husband and wife and co-parents to an amazing little girl. We're whatever we choose to be, as long as we choose it together." As they sat in comfortable silence, looking out over the city they both loved, both of them knew they had just navigated their first real test as a couple. There would be others, more moments when their different backgrounds and expectations would clash, more times when they would have to choose between the easy path and the right one. But they also knew they had something worth fighting for, something worth the hard work of learning to love across the divides of class and culture and life experience. They had each other. They had Erin. And they had the growing understanding that the best love stories weren't the ones that came easily, but the ones that were built consciously, deliberately, with mutual respect and genuine partnership. It was, they were learning, the most beautiful foundation of all. Chapter 6. Walls Come Down. True intimacy is born not in moments of passion, but in the quiet spaces where two souls dare to show their scars, where the masks we wear for the world fall away, and we stand vulnerable before the one person we hope will see us truly and love us anyway. The Georgetown waterfront glowed amber and rose as the sun set over the Potomac River. Nick had chosen this quiet spot along the walking path for its privacy, far enough from crowds to allow intimate conversation, public enough that Demi might feel comfortable opening up. 3 weeks had passed since their engagement, and while their love had only deepened, Nick sensed walls around Demi's past that she hadn't yet trusted him to see beyond. They walked in comfortable silence, Erin skipping ahead of them, her sling now colorful with stickers and signatures from hospital staff. She had insisted on coming along, declaring that family walks were much more fun than grown-up talks. Nick had noticed how naturally Dimmy smiled at being included in Aaron's definition of family. "Miss Dimmy, look," Aaron called out, pointing to a family of ducks swimming near the shore. "The babies are following their mama just like I follow you and Daddy." Dimmy laughed, the sound music to Nick's ears. "They're learning to swim properly. Soon they'll be big enough to swim anywhere they want." "But they'll still stay with their family, right?" Aaron asked, genuine concern in her voice. "The best families always stay together," Nick said, catching Dimmy's eye with meaningful look. "No matter what challenges they face." As Aaron ran ahead to get closer to the ducks, Nick took the opportunity to study Dimmy's profile. She was beautiful in the evening light, her dark skin glowing warm and golden, curls moving gently in the river breeze. But there was something pensive in her expression, a distance that hadn't been there before their argument about the student loans. "You're quiet tonight," he said softly. "Is everything okay?" Demi was silent for a moment, watching Aaron crouch carefully by the water's edge, mindful of her healing ribs. "I've been thinking about what you said at the hospital, about becoming part of your family. And I'm scared that you don't really know what you're asking for," Demi said quietly. "You see me at my best, Nick. You see me competent and caring and strong. But you don't know where I come from or what shaped me or why I became so fiercely independent in the first place." Nick stopped walking, gently taking her arm so she would face him. "Then tell me everything." Demi looked into his eyes, those remarkable blue eyes that had become her anchor, and saw only patience and genuine interest. No judgment, no hidden agenda, just a man who wanted to know the woman he was falling deeper in love with each day. "I grew up in Baltimore," she began, her voice carrying the musical accent he loved. "My father, Alexios, was first-generation Greek-American who worked 16-hour days as a Navy mechanic to support his family. My mother, Adesi, was a Nigerian immigrant who cleaned office buildings at night so she could be home with us kids during the day." "How many siblings do you have?" "3. I'm the oldest. Daniel is 2 years younger. You met him. Then there's Sophia, who's finishing her master's in social work, and Marcus, who just started his sophomore year at Howard University on a pre-med scholarship." Demi's face softened with obvious love for her family. "My parents sacrificed everything to make sure we all got good educations." Nick felt a swell of admiration for this woman who came from such strength and determination. "They sound incredible." "They are. But Nick, we were poor. Not just money is tight poor, but choose between groceries and heat poor. I wore my cousin's hand-me-downs to school and worked in the cafeteria during lunch to get free meals. I shared a room with Sophia until I left for college, and even then I could only afford to go because I got a full academic scholarship to Johns Hopkins." "That's extraordinary. A full scholarship to Hopkins. You must have been an exceptional student." "I had to be," Demi said simply. "It was the only way out. But Nick, even with the scholarship, I still had to work 3 jobs to pay for books and living expenses. I cleaned offices like my mother, tutored younger students, and worked weekends at a local clinic filing medical records. That's where I first saw nurses in action." She paused, watching as Aaron carefully fed breadcrumbs to the ducks from a small bag Nick had brought along. "There was this one nurse, Mrs. Washington. She was probably in her 50s, had been working at that clinic for 20 years, and she had this way of making every patient feel like the most important person in the world. She noticed I was interested in what they did, and she started explaining procedures to me, letting me shadow her during breaks." "Is that when you decided to become a nurse?" "Not exactly," Demi said, her voice growing quieter. "That decision came later, when my little brother Marcus got sick." Nick felt his chest tighten at the change in her tone. "What happened?" He was 14, a freshman in high school, and he started having these horrible headaches. My parents took him to the emergency room twice, but both times they were told it was just stress, maybe tension from school. The doctors barely looked at him, just assumed that a black kid from our neighborhood was probably making it up for attention or pain medication. Nick felt anger rise in his chest at the implicit racism in that assumption, but he stayed quiet, sensing that Demi needed to tell this story in her own way. The third time Marcus collapsed at school, they rushed him to Johns Hopkins, where they discovered he had a brain tumor. A brain tumor, Nick. If we had caught it earlier, if those doctors had actually listened to us instead of dismissing us. She took a shaky breath. He needed surgery immediately. Is he okay now? Nick asked, though the fact that she'd mentioned Marcus being in college suggested a positive outcome. He is, thank God. The surgery was successful, and he's been cancer-free for 8 years now. But the experience of watching my baby brother fight for his life, of seeing how the nurses at Hopkins treated him with such compassion and skill. Demi wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. That's when I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be the person who listened, who cared, who made sure that no child ever felt unheard or unimportant. Nick reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. That's why you're so incredible at what you do. You're not just treating symptoms, you're honoring the whole person. But don't you see? Demi turned to face him fully, her brown eyes bright with unshed tears. I come from a world where people like you don't usually care about people like me. I've seen what happens when different social classes try to mix. I've watched wealthy patients treat nurses like servants, like we're invisible. And I've been in relationships where men thought my background was charming until they realized it came with permanent limitations. Nick squeezed her hand gently. Tell me about that. Demi was quiet for a moment, clearly debating whether to continue. Then she seemed to make a decision. His name was Andrew Richardson. Dr. Andrew Richardson. He was a cardiologist from a very prominent family here in D.C. We met when I was working at Georgetown University Hospital, and he pursued me relentlessly. Flowers, expensive dinners, weekend trips to his family's estate on the Eastern Shore. Nick felt a stab of jealousy, but more than that, he felt a sense of foreboding about where this story was heading. For 6 months, I believed him when he said my background didn't matter, Demi continued. He said he admired my work ethic, my dedication to helping others. He even talked about introducing me to his family. But when he finally did, what happened? His mother took one look at me and knew exactly what I was. The daughter of a mechanic and a cleaning lady, someone who didn't belong in their world. She was polite, of course. These people always are. But she made it clear that I wasn't suitable for someone of Andrew's caliber. And Andrew, Demi's voice grew bitter. Andrew suddenly discovered that maybe we were moving too fast. Maybe we needed to slow things down. He chose his mother over you, Nick said, his voice tight with anger. He chose his world over me, Demi corrected. The world where people like me are fine to work for you, to serve you, but not to marry you or bear your children or attend your country club events. Nick stopped walking completely, turning to face her. Demi, I am not Andrew Richardson. Aren't you? She asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Nick, you live in a penthouse. You have a housekeeper and a personal assistant and a driver. You attend charity galas where people bid thousands of dollars on dinner with celebrities just for fun. Your daughter goes to private school that costs more per year than my father makes in 2 years. You exist in a stratosphere that I can't even comprehend. None of that matters, Nick said fiercely. None of it means anything without someone to share it with. Without you. But it does matter, Demi insisted. When your friends and business associates meet me, when they find out I grew up poor, when they see that I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners, or how to make small talk about vacation homes in Martha's Vineyard, then they'll see exactly what I see, Nick interrupted. A woman of incredible strength and intelligence and compassion. A woman who saved the life of my daughter. A woman who makes me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. Dimmy looked at him with such longing and fear mixed together that Nick felt his heart break a little. I want to believe you, she whispered. But Nick, you don't understand what it's like to always be the outsider, to always feel like you're being judged and found wanting, to have people assume you're after something instead of assuming you belong. You're right, Nick said quietly. I don't understand that, but I want to. And I want you to help me understand. I want you to tell me when I'm being thoughtless or privileged, or when I need to see things differently. I want you to be my partner in all of this, not my guest. Before Demi could respond, Erin came running back to them, her face bright with excitement. Daddy, Miss Demi. The mama duck has 5 babies, and one of them is smaller than the others. But the mama is taking extra care of it. She grabbed both their hands, clearly wanting to share her discovery. The mama knows that the little one needs more help, so she keeps it close to her. Isn't that what families do? Nick and Dimmy looked at each other over Aaron's head, both struck by the simple wisdom of a 7-year-old's observation. Yes, sweetheart, Nick said softly, his eyes never leaving Dimmy's face. That's exactly what families do. They take care of each other, no matter what. As they started walking back toward the car, Aaron chattering happily about the ducks, Dimmy felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe Nick was right. Maybe love really could bridge the gap between their different worlds. Maybe she had been so focused on protecting herself from being hurt again that she was missing the chance to build something beautiful. Nick, she said quietly as he helped her into his car, there's something else you should know about me. He looked at her with complete attention, as if nothing else in the world mattered. I'm stubborn, she said with a small smile, and independent to a fault. And I have strong opinions about everything from politics to how to properly fold fitted sheets. And sometimes I work too much because I feel like I have to prove that I deserve to be there. Nick smiled back, the kind of smile that lit up his entire face. Is that supposed to scare me away? It's supposed to give you fair warning, Dimmy said. Because if we're really going to try this, you need to know that I'm not going to change who I am to fit into your world. I can't be someone I'm not. I wouldn't want you to, Nick said simply. I fell in love with exactly who you are. The stubborn, independent, brilliant, beautiful woman who saves lives and makes my daughter laugh and challenges me to be better. I don't want a woman who fits into my world. I want a woman who makes my world bigger and better just by being in it. As Nick started the car and began driving them home, Demi realized that for the first time since Andrew Richardson had broken her heart, she was ready to believe that maybe, just maybe, love really could conquer all. But she also realized that Nick hadn't told her his own story yet. And if they were truly going to tear down the walls between them, she needed to know what fears and scars he was carrying too. Nick, she said softly as they pulled into the penthouse garage, next time I want to hear about Elizabeth. I want to know about your first love and how you've been raising Aaron alone and what scares you about letting someone new into your life. Nick was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Next time, he agreed. I promise. As he walked her to the elevator and kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet and full of promise, Demi felt the last of her protective walls beginning to crumble. She was falling in love with Nick Simpson, despite every logical reason why she shouldn't. And for the first time in 3 years, that felt like the most right thing in the world. Chapter 7. The First Kiss. There are kisses that mark beginnings. First kisses, stolen kisses, kisses of promise and possibility. But some kisses exist in their own perfect universe, where two souls recognize they have found their home in each other, and the world becomes precisely as it should be. The tidal basin was Washington, D.C.'s crown jewel in early April, when thousands of cherry blossom trees burst into magnificent bloom around the calm waters that reflected the Jefferson Memorial like a dream made manifest. Nick had suggested meeting here during Dimmy's lunch break, claiming he wanted to show her the most beautiful sight in the city before the petals began to fall. What he hadn't told her was that he'd been carrying his grandmother's engagement ring in his jacket pocket for 3 days, waiting for the perfect moment to ask the question that had been burning in his heart since that first impossible proposal in the hospital consultation room. Today felt different. Today felt like destiny. Demi walked toward him along the tree-lined path, and Nick felt his breath catch as he watched her approach. She wore a simple yellow sundress that complemented her warm brown skin beautifully, her dark curls loose around her shoulders, moving with the natural grace that never failed to mesmerize him. But it was her smile, radiant and genuine, and entirely for him, that made his heart race with the force of recognition. This was his person, his future, his home. "This is incredible," she said as she reached him, gesturing at the canopy of pink and white blossoms that surrounded them like nature's cathedral. "I've lived in D.C. for 6 years, and I've never taken time to see the cherry blossoms properly." "That's a crime against beauty," Nick said, offering her his arm. "Come on, I want to show you the perfect spot." They walked slowly along the water's edge, soft petals falling around them like confetti. Other couples and families shared the path, but Nick had eyes only for the woman beside him. Over the past month since their engagement, they had talked every day, long phone calls stretching into night, quick text messages throughout busy days, stolen moments between her shifts and his meetings, where they learned each other's rhythms and dreams. "How's Erin feeling today?" Demi asked as they paused to watch a family of geese swimming near the shore. "Much better. She's back to her usual energetic self, which means she's driving her tutor crazy with questions about everything except her actual lessons." Nick smiled at the memory of Erin's excitement that morning. "She asked me if you were coming to her school's art show next week." "She has an art show?" Demi's face lit up with interest. "What kind of art?" "Mixed media, apparently. She's been working on something she calls My Family Tree, but she won't let me see it until the show. She says it's a surprise." Nick paused, studying Demi's expression. "She really wants you there, Demi." "We both do." "Of course I'll be there," Demi said without hesitation. "I wouldn't miss it." The easy way she said it, as if attending Erin's school events was already a natural part of her life, made Nick's chest warm with hope and certainty. They had settled into a rhythm that felt remarkably natural. Dinners at his penthouse where Demi helped Erin with homework while Nick cooked. Weekend walks through various D.C. neighborhoods. Quiet evenings watching movies while Erin fell asleep between them on the couch. It felt like family. It felt like home. It felt like everything Nick had never dared to hope for again. "There," he said, guiding her to a secluded spot where a magnificent weeping cherry tree created a natural bower overlooking the water. "This is what I wanted you to see." Demi gasped softly as she took in the view. The tree's drooping branches, heavy with pink blossoms, created a private sanctuary around them. Through the curtain of flowers, they could see the Jefferson Memorial across the water, its white columns perfectly reflected in the tidal basin's still surface. "Nick, this is—" She turned in a slow circle, her face filled with wonder. "It's magical." "I thought you might like it," Nick said, his voice softer now, touched with nervous anticipation. "But actually, I brought you here because I wanted to share something with you. Something I should have told you weeks ago." Demi's expression grew more serious as she noticed the change in his tone. "What is it?" Nick took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say would deepen their connection in ways that couldn't be undone. This was the story he'd never told completely, the wound he'd learned to carry with grace, but had never fully opened to another person's healing touch. "I want to tell you about Elizabeth," he began, his hands clasped behind his back, as if stillness could help him find the right words. "About my first marriage and how I learned to love completely, lost that love to death, and somehow found the courage to believe in it again." "You don't have to." "I want to," Nick interrupted gently. "I need to if we're going to build something real together." Demi settled onto a bench beneath the cherry tree, giving him her complete attention. Nick remained standing, as if movement would help him navigate the emotional landscape he was about to explore. "I met Elizabeth in college, Princeton. She was studying art history, and I was focused on business and economics. We were complete opposites in many ways, but somehow we just fit." Nick's voice grew soft with memory. She was gentle and creative, and had this gift for seeing beauty in everything. She could spend hours in a museum, studying a single painting, finding details that everyone else missed. "She sounds wonderful," Demi said quietly, and Nick could hear the sincerity in her voice, the generosity of spirit that allowed her to honor his past love without jealousy. She was. We got married right after graduation, and for the first few years everything was perfect. I was building the business, she was working at the Smithsonian as a curator, and we were planning our future together. We wanted children, but it took us several years to conceive Erin." Nick paused, staring out at the water where cherry blossom petals floated like wishes made manifest. "When Elizabeth finally got pregnant, we were so happy. She glowed with it, you know. She would talk to the baby every night, read to her, play classical music. She had already decorated the nursery with these beautiful, hand-painted murals of fairy tale scenes." "That's lovely," Demi said, though she could sense the sadness coming. "Erin was born perfectly healthy, beautiful, everything we had dreamed of. Elizabeth was an incredible mother from day one, patient, nurturing, completely devoted. For 2 years we were deliriously happy. And then," Nick's voice cracked slightly, "then Elizabeth started getting these terrible headaches." Demi felt her chest tighten, recognizing the parallels to her own brother's story and sensing the tragedy that was unfolding. "At first, we thought it was just exhaustion from sleepless nights with a toddler, but they got worse. Much worse." Nick turned back to face her, and she saw the raw pain that he still carried after all these years. "It was brain cancer. Aggressive, fast-moving. By the time we caught it, it had already spread. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 4. "Oh, Nick," Demi breathed, her heart breaking for him and for the little girl who had lost her mother so young. "The worst part," Nick continued, tears now flowing freely down his face, "was watching her try to hide how sick she was from Erin. She would get up in the morning, pale and weak from chemo, and still sing songs and read stories and play dress-up. Right until the very end, she was more worried about Erin than about herself." Nick finally sat down beside Demi on the bench, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body and the tremor of emotion running through him. "She made me promise," he said, his voice breaking completely, "that I would find love again, that I wouldn't let grief make me forget that Erin needed to see what real partnership looked like. She said she wanted Erin to grow up believing in love, not loss. And did you try to find love again?" Nick shook his head. "I dated a few women over the years, but nothing serious. Nothing that felt worth risking Erin's stability. I convinced myself that I'd had my great love, and asking for more would be greedy." He looked directly into Demi's eyes. "Until I met you." Nick ... "No, let me finish," he said, reaching for her hands. "What I felt for Elizabeth was beautiful, and real, and lasting. She will always be part of who I am, part of Erin's story, part of our family's history. But, Demi, what I feel for you is different. It's not better or worse, it's just different. Elizabeth taught my heart how to love completely, and now that heart recognizes something precious when it sees it. Demi felt tears spilling down her own cheeks as she listened to the raw honesty in his voice, the careful way he was honoring both his past and their present. I know this is complicated, Nick continued. I know it's not easy to love someone who carries another person's memory so carefully. But I also know that what we have, what we're building together, is its own beautiful thing. It doesn't diminish what came before. It expands what's possible going forward. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box she remembered from the hospital. But this time the gesture felt different. Not desperate or rushed, but considered and certain. I'm not asking you to replace Elizabeth, Nick said, his voice growing stronger with each word. I'm asking you to help me honor the promise I made to her, to show Erin what love looks like when it's chosen consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of both its power and its fragility. He opened the box, and the vintage ring caught the dappled sunlight filtering through cherry blossoms, throwing tiny rainbows across their hands. I'm asking you to marry me not because I'm grateful for what you did, but because I can't imagine building a future without you in it. Because you've shown me that the heart isn't a finite resource, but an infinite one. Because loving you doesn't take away from what I felt for Elizabeth. It proves that what she and I built together was strong enough to teach me how to love again. Demi looked at the ring, then at Nick's face, seeing in his blue eyes not just love but also courage, the bravery required to risk his heart again after losing so much, to trust that life might offer second chances to those brave enough to reach for them. Yes, she whispered, so quietly that he had to lean closer to hear her. Yes, yes, I'll marry you, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Yes, I'll help you keep the promise you made to Elizabeth. Yes, I'll show Erin what love looks like when it's chosen and cherished and protected. Yes, to all of it. Nick's face broke into the most radiant smile she had ever seen as he slipped the vintage ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along, and the weight of it felt right in a way that nothing else ever had. And then, finally, he kissed her. It was nothing like the sweet, tentative kisses they had shared before. This kiss was claiming and passionate and full of promise. It tasted like cherry blossoms and forever, and when Nick's arms encircled her waist, pulling her closer, Demi felt like she was discovering a place she'd never known existed, but had always been meant to find. The world around them seemed to shimmer and fade, until there was nothing but the two of them, surrounded by falling petals, and the certainty that they had just committed to building something beautiful and lasting together. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nick rested his forehead against hers. "Mrs. Simpson," he said softly, testing the sound of it. "Not yet," Demi laughed, though she loved the way it sounded. "But soon." "Soon," Nick agreed, kissing her again, softer this time, but no less profound. As they stood there in their private sanctuary of cherry blossoms, holding each other and marveling at the miracle of finding true love when they'd least expected it, neither of them noticed the photographer from the Washington Post who had been capturing the cherry blossom season for the lifestyle section. Neither of them realized that their perfect private moment had been immortalized, or that by tomorrow morning their engagement would be front-page news across the city. All they knew was that they had found each other, and that was enough to make anything possible. The cherry blossoms continued to fall around them like nature's confetti, blessing the beginning of their forever with beauty and hope, and the promise that some love stories really are worth believing in. And in that perfect moment, surrounded by spring's most magnificent gift and the certainty of each other's love, they understood that they were exactly where they belonged, not just in this magical place, but in each other's hearts, where they would remain for all the seasons yet to come. Chapter 8. Love's Confession. Love becomes real not in the moment it's declared, but in the quiet hours that follow, when two people walk hand in hand through the world they're about to share, making ordinary moments sacred through the simple act of choosing each other over and over again. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nick's penthouse as Dimmy stood in his kitchen, still wearing the vintage diamond ring that caught the light with every movement. She was making pancakes from scratch while Nick sat at the breakfast bar, his laptop forgotten as he watched her with undisguised adoration. "You're staring," Dimmy said without turning around, though he could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm appreciating," Nick corrected. "I want to remember exactly how you look in my kitchen, making breakfast for our daughter, wearing my grandmother's ring." "Our daughter," Demi repeated softly, the words still feeling wonderfully new. It had been 2 weeks since their engagement became public, and Aaron had taken the news with pure joy, immediately asking if this meant Demi would be at every bedtime story and school play from now on. "Where is our daughter this morning?" Demi asked, flipping a perfect golden pancake. "Still asleep. Yesterday's adventure at the Air and Space Museum wore her out completely." Nick smiled at the memory of Erin's excitement. "She told me it was the best day of her whole life because all my favorite people were together." The past month had been a whirlwind of getting to know each other in new ways, sharing morning coffee while Erin got ready for school, family dinners, bedtime stories. It felt natural in a way that still amazed her. "Nick," she said, turning to face him with a stack of pancakes, "can I ask you something? Yesterday, when that reporter approached us outside the museum, you looked terrified." "Why?" Nick's expression grew serious. "Because I know what this world can do to the people I love. I've seen how the media can twist private moments into public spectacles." "But we're not doing anything wrong," Demi pointed out. "We're just two people who fell in love. We're a billionaire and a nurse who got engaged after knowing each other for 3 weeks," Nick corrected. "The press is going to scrutinize every aspect of our relationship. They'll dig into your background, interview people from your past, analyze every photo of us together." Demi felt a chill run down her spine. "That's horrible." "It is," Nick agreed, "but I promise you, we'll get through it together. Once they realize we're just boringly happy together, they'll move on to someone else." The sound of small feet running down the hallway announced Erin's arrival. She burst into the kitchen wearing her favorite heart-covered pajamas and immediately climbed onto the stool between them. "Good morning, my beautiful family," Erin announced dramatically. "Are we having pancakes? Did Mommy Dimmy make them? She makes the best pancakes in the whole world." "Good morning, sweetheart," Dimmy said, kissing the top of Erin's head. "And yes, I made pancakes just for you." "With chocolate chips?" "Of course with chocolate chips. What kind of future stepmother would I be if I made plain pancakes?" Erin giggled. "The boring kind." "But you're not boring, Mommy Dimmy. You're magical." "Magical, huh?" Nick asked. "What makes Mommy Dimmy magical?" "Well," Erin said seriously, counting on her fingers, "she makes sad people feel better when they're hurt. She knows exactly what to say when I have bad dreams. She laughs at my jokes even when they're not very funny. And she makes you smile all the time now, Daddy, even when you think nobody's looking." Dimmy felt tears prick her eyes at Erin's simple honesty. Over the past month, she had fallen completely in love with this little girl. After breakfast, they decided to spend the day exploring Washington, D.C.'s monuments. Their first stop was the Lincoln Memorial, where Erin insisted on reading every word of the Gettysburg Address. Then they walked through the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where the black granite wall reflected their images. "It's so sad," Erin said quietly, holding Demi's hand. "All those people who died in the war." "It is sad," Demi agreed. but it's also important to remember them and honor their sacrifice. Is that why you became a nurse? To help people so they don't die? Dimi looked down at Erin's serious face. Partly, yes. I became a nurse because I want to help heal people when they're hurt or sick. Sometimes that means helping them get better, and sometimes it means helping them be comfortable and surrounded by love. Their next stop was the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, where Erin spent an hour in the dinosaur exhibit, asking endless questions about extinction and evolution. She's going to be a scientist, Nick said as they watched Erin examine a fossilized Triceratops skull. Or maybe a doctor, like she says she wants to be. She's going to be whatever makes her happy, Dimi replied, and we're going to support her no matter what she chooses. Nick's heart clenched at the casual way she said "we," as if their partnership in raising Erin was already an established fact. As the afternoon wore on, they made their way back to the tidal basin. The cherry blossoms were past their peak now, but there were still enough petals clinging to the branches to create a magical atmosphere. "This is where Daddy asked you to marry him, right?" Erin asked as they approached the same bench where Nick had proposed. "It is," Dimi confirmed. "Daddy told me all about it," Erin said matter-of-factly. "He said you cried happy tears and that the cherry blossoms fell all around you like nature was celebrating too." "That's exactly what happened," Nick said, settling onto the bench and pulling Erin onto his lap while Dimi sat beside them. "And now you're going to be my real mommy, forever and always." "If you want me to be," Dimi said carefully. "I do want you to be," Erin said firmly. "I asked my first mommy in heaven if it was okay, and I got a feeling that she said yes, because she wants Daddy and me to be happy." Dimi felt tears spill down her cheeks at the innocent faith in Erin's words. Nick reached over to squeeze her hand, his own eyes bright with emotion. "I think your first mommy would love Dimi very much," Nick said softly. "And I think she'd be happy that we found each other." As the sun began to set over the Potomac River, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Nick realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for, when everything felt complete, when his family felt whole again. "Dimi," he said quietly while Erin dozed against his chest, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" she asked, noting the serious tone in his voice. "I love you," Nick said simply. "Not just because you saved Erin's life, not just because you're beautiful and kind. I love you because you make me want to be the best version of myself. I love you because you see the world through eyes of compassion and hope. I love you because you've given me back my faith in happiness." Dimi felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might burst. Nick ... "I love you because you make ordinary moments feel magical," he continued. "Like this moment, sitting here with you and Erin, watching the sunset. A year ago, this would have been just another evening. But with you here, it feels like the most perfect moment of my entire life." "I love you too," Dimi said, leaning over to kiss him softly while Erin slept peacefully between them. "I love your devotion to Erin, your kindness to everyone you meet, the way you make me feel like I can be myself completely without fear of judgment. I love how you've made me believe in fairy tales again." "So we're really doing this?" Nick asked, his voice full of wonder. "We're really going to get married and raise Erin together and build a life that probably makes no sense to anyone but us?" "We're really doing this," Dimi confirmed, holding up her left hand where his grandmother's ring caught the last rays of sunlight. "All of it. Forever." "Forever," Nick agreed, kissing her again, softer this time but no less profound. As they sat there in the gathering dusk, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Nick's arms, both of them realized that love really could conquer all, not because it erased the challenges they would face, but because it gave them the strength to face those challenges together. Tomorrow would bring new obstacles, more media attention, the complex logistics of planning a wedding. But tonight, in this perfect moment beside the water where cherry blossom petals still danced on the evening breeze, they had everything they needed. They had each other. They had Aaron. They had a love that had been tested by crisis and strengthened by honesty and blessed by the simple miracle of finding the right person at exactly the right time. "Come on," Nick said softly, carefully lifting Aaron without waking her. "Let's go home." Home. The word had never sounded so perfect, carrying with it the promise of everything they were building together. Not just a place to live, but a foundation for love that would last a lifetime. Chapter 9. Forever begins. Sometimes life tests our greatest joys, not with dramatic crises, but with quiet moments of doubt, when the reality of commitment settles in, and we must choose between the safety of familiar fears and the brave vulnerability of opening our hearts completely to love's transformative power. The call came at 11:23 p.m., just as Dimmy and Nick were settling into bed after their engagement celebration. Nick's phone rang with the emergency tone, and both of them immediately tensed. "Mr. Simpson." The voice belonged to Mrs. Patterson, the overnight nanny. "I'm so sorry to disturb you, but Erin is asking for you both. She's quite upset, and I think you should come home." "What happened?" Nick was already reaching for his clothes, his face pale with worry. "She had a nightmare, sir. A very intense one about being separated from you and Miss Dimmy. She's been crying for 30 minutes and keeps saying she needs to make sure you're both still here." Nick and Dimmy exchanged worried glances. Erin had been doing so well lately, but sometimes children processed big changes in unexpected ways, and the engagement party might have triggered deeper fears about abandonment and loss. "We'll be right there," Nick said. 20 minutes later, they found Erin curled up in Nick's bed, clutching the stuffed rabbit Dimmy had given her. Her face was blotchy from crying, and she looked smaller than usual in her princess pajamas. "Daddy, Mommy Dimmy," she cried when she saw them, immediately reaching for both of them. "I had the worst dream ever." "What was the dream about, sweetheart?" Dimmy asked gently, settling on one side of the bed while Nick took the other. "I dreamed that you got married and then you decided you didn't like being a family anymore," Erin said, her voice small and scared. "And Mommy Dimmy, you went back to just being a nurse who I only saw at the hospital. And Daddy, you went back to being sad all the time, like before first Mommy died." Nick felt his heart clench. "Baby girl, that's never going to happen. Never." "But what if it does?" Erin asked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "What if you change your minds? What if I'm not good enough to be in a real family?" The question hit both adults like a physical blow. Dimmy felt tears spring to her own eyes as she realized how deeply Erin's fears ran. "Oh, sweetheart," Dimmy said, pulling Erin into her arms. "You are more than good enough. You are the most wonderful, smart, brave, kind little girl in the whole world." "But what if you get tired of me?" Erin whispered. "What if I get sick again and have to go back to the hospital a lot? What if you decide it's too hard to be my mommy?" Nick moved closer, wrapping both Erin and Dimmy in his arms. "Erin, look at me," he said gently. "Do you remember what I told you when first Mommy was sick?" Erin nodded. "You said that families stick together no matter what, even when things get scary or hard." "That's right. And have I ever broken that promise?" "No," Erin said quietly. "I'm never going to break it," Nick said firmly. "And neither is Mommy Dimmy. When we get married, we're promising to love you and to be your parents and to stick together as a family, no matter what happens. Even if my heart gets sick again?" "Especially if your heart gets sick again," Dimmy said, her voice thick with emotion. "Erin, being your mommy isn't a job I'm trying out. It's who I am now. It's who I want to be forever." She pulled back slightly so she could look directly into Erin's eyes. "Do you know what I was most excited about at our engagement party tonight?" "What?" when people asked me about our wedding plans, and I got to say, our daughter will be our flower girl. Not Nick's daughter. Our daughter. Because that's what you are to me now, Aaron. Aaron studied Dimmy's face with intense scrutiny. Really? Even though I didn't grow in your tummy like I grew in first Mommy's tummy? Especially because of that, Dimmy said with conviction. You know what makes someone a real mother, Aaron? It's choosing to love that child every single day, choosing to worry about them and protect them and celebrate with them. And I choose all of that with you. I choose it today, and I'll choose it tomorrow, and I'll keep choosing it for the rest of my life. What about when you and Daddy have babies that grow in your tummy? Aaron asked. Nick and Demi exchanged a look over Aaron's head. If Daddy and I have more children someday, Demi said carefully, that will just mean our family gets bigger. It won't mean we love you any less. Love isn't like pizza, sweetheart. We don't have to give you smaller pieces if more people want some. Love grows bigger when more people share it. Like how your heart grew bigger when you met Daddy, Aaron asked. Exactly like that. Nick cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. Aaron, I need to tell you something important. When first Mommy was very sick, she made me promise that I would find love again. Not because she wanted to be replaced, but because she wanted you to see what a happy family looks like. Aaron's eyes grew wide. First, Mommy wanted you to marry Mommy Demi. First, Mommy wanted me to find someone who would love us both completely, Nick said. Someone who would be a wonderful mother to you and a loving partner to me. And that's Mommy Demi? That's Mommy Demi, Nick confirmed. First, Mommy would love her so much, Aaron. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, processing this with serious consideration. Finally, she looked up at both of them with wonder in her eyes. So, first Mommy helped Daddy find Mommy Demi? I think maybe she did, Demi said softly. I think maybe she's been watching over us, making sure we all found each other when we needed each other most. That's the most beautiful thing ever, Aaron breathed. It's like magic. It is like magic, Nick agreed. The very best kind of magic. Aaron yawned then, the emotional exhaustion finally giving way to sleepiness. Can I sleep with you both tonight? I want to make sure you're still here when I wake up. Of course, Demi said immediately. We'll be right here all night. As they settled into bed, Nick on one side, Demi on the other, and Aaron safely between them, Nick felt a profound sense of completion wash over him. This was his family. Daddy? Aaron's voice was drowsy now. Yes, baby girl. I'm sorry I was scared. I know you and Mommy Demi love me. You never have to apologize for being scared, Nick said gently. Everyone gets scared sometimes. The important thing is that we talk about it so we can help each other feel better. And we're really going to be a forever family? The most forever family that ever existed, Demi promised. Good, Aaron mumbled, already half asleep. I can't wait to be the best flower girl ever at your wedding. As Aaron's breathing deepened into sleep, Nick and Demi lay in the darkness, processing the emotional intensity of the evening. She's been carrying those fears for a while, Demi whispered. I should have realized, Nick said, guilt coloring his voice. You couldn't have known, Demi assured him. Children process trauma in their own time. The important thing is that we were here when she needed us. Nick was quiet for a moment, then said, Demi, what you told her tonight about choosing to be her mother, that was beautiful. But I need you to know that it goes both ways. You're not just choosing us. We're choosing you too. Every day I choose to love you and build this life with you. Even when it's complicated. Even when we have to navigate things like tonight. Especially then, Nick said firmly. Love isn't just about the easy moments, Demi. It's about showing up for each other when things get difficult. It's about choosing each other over and over again, through everything life throws at us. Demi felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love you both so much," she whispered. "This life we're building, this family we're creating. It's everything I never knew I wanted." "And it's just the beginning," Nick replied. "Tomorrow we start planning our wedding, and then we'll have the rest of our lives to keep that promise." As they finally drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the quiet peace of their penthouse and the warm weight of their daughter between them, all three of them knew that they had just crossed an important threshold. They had faced fear together and come out stronger. They had chosen each other not just in the bright moments of celebration, but in the vulnerable darkness of doubt and worry. They were no longer just two adults dating and a child caught in the middle. They were a family, real, committed, forever. And tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of their lives together, built on a foundation of love strong enough to weather any storm. Home was each other. Chapter 10. The Heart's True Home. Some love stories end with a kiss, but the most beautiful ones end with a promise, a vow spoken before witnesses who have seen the worst and best of two souls, binding together hearts that have already proven their capacity to weather any storm and still choose each other every single day. 6 months later, the chapel at Washington General Hospital had been transformed into something that belonged in a fairy tale. White roses and baby's breath adorned every pew, and golden sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting rainbow patterns across the altar where Demi Sianis was about to become Mrs. Nicholas Simpson. In the small bridal preparation room, Demi stood before a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the radiant woman staring back at her. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of elegant simplicity. Ivory silk that flowed like water, with delicate lace sleeves. Her dark curls had been swept into an intricate updo adorned with small white flowers, and Nick's grandmother's pearl earrings completed the look. "You look like a princess," Erin announced from her perch on a small chair, resplendent in her flower girl dress of soft pink silk. "Like someone who's about to marry my daddy and be my real mommy forever." Maya Ward, resplendent in deep burgundy as maid of honor, stood ready with tissues, while Demi's mother, Adize, took her daughter's hands. "My beautiful daughter," she said softly, "your father and I are so proud of you. Nick Simpson is a good man who sees your worth and celebrates it." Dr. Henry Reed peered in with a gentle smile. "Ladies, it's time. The groom is getting antsy." The chapel was filled with the people who had witnessed their love story unfold. Hospital staff, patients' families, Demi's nursing school classmates. In the back pew, several pediatric patients sat in wheelchairs, insisting on being present for Miss Demi's wedding day. As the wedding march began, Erin started down the aisle first, scattering rose petals with serious concentration. Then Maya appeared, walking with elegant grace. And then it was Demi's turn. She appeared at the back of the chapel on her father's arm, and the entire gathering rose to their feet. But Demi only had eyes for the man standing at the altar, watching her approach with such love and wonder that she felt her heart might burst from happiness. Nick Simpson stood tall and handsome in his black tuxedo, his blue eyes bright with unshed tears as he watched his bride walk toward him. Beside him, Ethan Knight and Daniel Mills served as groomsmen. When Alexios placed Demi's hand in Nick's, he whispered, "Take care of our daughter." "I promise," Nick replied, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony was officiated by the hospital chaplain, Reverend Sarah. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in this place of healing to witness the union of Nicholas and Demetra, two souls who found each other in the midst of crisis and discovered that love is the greatest medicine of all. Nicholas and Demetra have written their own vows," she continued. Nick pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket, though he hardly needed it. "Demi," he began, his voice strong and clear, "6 months ago, You saved my daughter's life with your skilled hands and gentle voice, but you were about to save mine too. You taught me that the heart isn't a finite resource, that loving you doesn't diminish what I felt for Elizabeth, but expands my capacity for love in ways I never imagined. He paused, his eyes never leaving her face. I promise to love you not just in the easy moments, but especially in the hard ones. I promise to support your dreams, to never ask you to be anyone other than exactly who you are. I promise to be your partner in raising Aaron, in building our family, in facing whatever challenges come our way. And I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing us. Demi, Reverend Sarah said gently. Your vows? Nick, she began, her voice clear and strong. What we have defies logic and good sense, but it's also the most real thing I've ever experienced. I promise to love you and Aaron with my whole heart, not just as individuals, but as the family we've become. I promise to bring my strength to our partnership, to always choose us. Her voice grew stronger. I promise to honor the love you shared with Elizabeth, to help Erin remember her first mother while building new memories together. And I promise to remember that love isn't just about the people in this relationship, but about how we use our love to heal the world around us. As Demi finished her vows, Erin stepped forward with the serious expression of someone who had something important to say. Can I do my vows now? She asked in a stage whisper. Of course, sweetheart, Demi said, kneeling down while still holding Nick's hand. I promise to be the best daughter ever, Erin announced solemnly. I promise to always tell the truth, even when I accidentally break something. I promise to help take care of our family and to always remember that we chose each other. And I promise to love you forever and always, Mommy Demi, because you're going to be my real mommy. There wasn't a person in the chapel who wasn't crying now. By the power vested in me, Reverend Sarah said finally, and in the presence of these witnesses who have seen your love grow and strengthen through every challenge, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Nick, you may kiss your bride. Nick cupped Demi's face in his hands. Hello, Mrs. Simpson, he whispered. Hello, husband, she whispered back. And then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise, while the chapel erupted in applause and cheers. The most joyful sound of all was Erin's delighted laughter as she hugged both their legs, completing the circle of their new family. As they walked back down the aisle together, Nick and Demi hand in hand, Erin between them, the hospital staff threw flower petals, creating a shower of celebration around them. Outside the chapel, as photographers captured their first moments as a married family, Nick pulled Demi close while Erin danced around them. Any regrets? He asked quietly. Only one, Demi said, making his heart skip a beat. What's that? That we didn't do this sooner, she said with a radiant smile. I love you, Nick Simpson. I love our daughter. I love the family we've built and the life we're going to share. I love you too, Mrs. Simpson, Nick replied, spinning her around as Erin giggled and tried to catch the flower petals still dancing in the air. As the sun set over Washington, D.C., the Simpson family walked toward their car and their new life together. They had found each other in a place of healing, and they had chosen to return there to make their promises official. As they drove toward home, with Erin chattering excitedly about the reception, Nick reached over to take Demi's hand. Thank you, he said quietly, for saving us, all of us, for making us believe in happily ever after. Demi squeezed his hand, her wedding ring catching the light. Thank you for teaching me that fairy tales can come true, even for stubborn nurses who think they're too practical for magic. And as they headed toward their penthouse, their home, their sanctuary, their new beginning, all three of them knew that this wasn't really an ending at all. It was just the beginning of forever,